So the Detroit Lions have now devolved into the Mike Tomlin Pittsburgh Steelers in the sense that we are celebrating just having a winning season for the fourth straight year. That was the post that the Lions were putting out after the Lions concluded their season with a win in Chicago to sweep the Chicago Bears. It's the little things that matter over here. Welcome into the Payne and Drain show, everyone, as we preview the Lions offseason after a 9-8 season that resulted in the Lions finishing fourth in the NFC North. It is only the second time in the Super Bowl era that an entire division has finished above 500. So good job to the NFC North, I guess. And we also have an 8-9 team that just made the playoffs and won the NFC South. So there is still no justice in the football world. So welcome in, everyone. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. And Alex, how are we feeling going into the playoffs without the Lions present?
Well, I don't really feel like it's a big loss in the sense that I don't really think this team had, I don't know. It is a wide open year, so you could say like, yeah, sure, get in, anyone can win, but I never really felt like this was a championship team, so I'm not devastated that they're not in. I am pleased with the game last week against Chicago. Minnesota won at 1 o'clock, so locked in the fourth place schedule, and then you're really the only difference was draft position 13 to 17. And I was like, I don't care that much. Like that, right? First overall pick versus 5 or 3 versus 7, those can be pretty big distinctions, but 13
Like
versus 17.
the Giants winning and screwing themselves like that, that's a
Yeah.
bigger deal than the Lions. I mean, we all know that Brad Holmes will probably just trade up for someone if he likes them enough anyways. So he'll send
13
another
versus
fourth.
17.
Yeah.
It's just not the biggest deal to me. So I was cheering for them to win, and that's always better. And he got a win against a playoff team, division winner in air
Whoa,
quotes there.
whoa,
But
whoa, whoa. They are that. They are both of those things
they are
factually.
factually the divisional winner. But it sends that message of like, and Holmes said this today, which we'll talk about later, but just that they're not that far away. After a few weeks where it really the narrative was about how bad everything was, that you get that kind of the flip side reminder in this game, which was definitely good. That there are still a lot of good things with this team, and they send the fans into the offseason with a little bit better taste in the mouth. So I'm glad about that at least.
I think the only important thing coming out of this podcast now is that Alex is a 2025 season denier. That didn't happen. They cheated, they rigged it. But yeah, so the Lions, we're going to do a bit of a more condensed game review as we do have a lot of offseason stuff to talk about, and we will preview the playoffs to some capacity as well. But going into this game, obviously nothing on the line for the Lions except for pride. But as we know, with Dan Campbell at the helm, that is not going to stop the Lions. They were going to come out ready to play, and they were coming out to win. And this game did not follow a script that I was expecting at all. For starters, it was starting on the offensive side of the ball. The Lions controlled the ball for the vast majority of the first half. They were going on lengthy drives, not a ton of explosives out there, and the red zone play calling suddenly became an issue. They also got a little too cute with the volume of trick plays in this one as we expected, but three wildcat plays in this game. It was I think Dan just got a little too cute back there calling with his play sheet.
Yeah, this is hopefully the last time that we will see him have the play sheet. He's not the world's worst offensive coordinator, but he's not the world's best either. I would prefer him to hand it over to the new OC, whoever that is, because this was uh, it was okay. Like it between the 20s, like it was fine, right? And then they
Yeah.
get inside the red zone, and then they just kind of did weird stuff. Like the first drive, when they get into the red zone, the first trip, they have a 2nd and 1. They try a tight end screen that gets blown up, and that really ends up being a decisive play because it backs them to 3rd and 5. They don't get it. Then the next time they're there, it's just 3 passes that they don't get anything on. And then the final time, the 2nd and goal at the 9 Montgomery Wildcat snap. It's just kind of like, what's going
Well,
on?
I I was watching watching the game, and I'm like, okay, Montgomery Wildcat, okay, Montgomery Wildcat again. I was the third time I was like, okay, this has to be the pass. Like they were so obviously setting up for a Montgomery pass at some point, and it wasn't even one of the wild card or Wildcat snaps. It was what they tried the play from a version of the play from last year, the back to Goff, where Jared Goff probably runs as fast as he has in his entire life, but Montgomery gets swarmed in the backfield and he's unable to do anything. It was just, and it was on a 3rd and 1 too. Like the short yardage play calling was very bizarre.
Yeah, I mean that 3rd and 1 sequence, they're driving in a tie game late, trying to win it. They get into a 2nd and 1, and they give to Gibbs, and he doesn't get the first down. And they bring Montgomery in on 3rd and 1. They call the trick play, and it is a disaster. And it just this will bleed into the Holmes press conference, but it's really weird to me how uninterested they were this season in using David Montgomery just to get first downs on short yardage. Like it never made any sense to me this whole year, to be honest, and it continued in this game. Like you've got him, he always falls forward, he always gets the extra yards. Last year, that was a frequent thing in him in short yardage. I mean, not just red zone, but
Or just him
we
in
remember.
general.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he was used much more overall, but we remember the game against Green Bay at home where they go for it 4th and 1 to win the game. Like that, those were just moments that were kind of the identity, and they wanted to make short yardage Gibbs more of a thing this year, and it wasn't as productive as it should have been. So then they bring him in on 3rd and 1, and then you still don't have him run it, and it's just kind of like,
It was, yeah. It's really weird in a season where the Lions strayed so far from their identity. I know part of that, a big part of that is the offensive line, but I just go back the week 1 last year, that overtime drive against the Rams, where David Montgomery won the game by himself, just running over everything that moved. The Baltimore game, where he's just running through everyone in his path. Like, he's such a like he's a starting running back on 20 teams, and the Lions are like, afterthought. Even though they gave him more money like recently, they gave him a recent extension, but and again, I've said this multiple times this year. I understand why they're so enamored with Gibbs, but what is the like? You can't just. We know what Gibbs is, and what he's not is someone who's going to break 50 tackles and be Superman back there. Like he's great in open space. When open space doesn't present itself, that's where Montgomery is better. There are things that Montgomery just does better than Jahmyr Gibbs, and the Lions for some reason didn't care this year.
yeah, it's mystifying, and as we'll talk about in the Holmes comments, maybe some changes are coming in the personnel at running back, which is, I think, a needed discussion after the usage. But this was
Yeah.
just another game where they just didn't. He didn't simplify it enough and lean on a legitimate strength in Montgomery, and it's kind of frustrating because the failures in the red zone, in particular, were mystifying when you had the success they had driving the field
Yeah.
overall. Like the first half, they just dominated the game, really. I mean, 19 minutes time of possession the first half. They finished at 35-45 for the game. I mean, they had the ball a ton in this game and just galloped up and down the field, and then they just run into those issues in the red zone. And they should have been up by a lot more than they were at points in this game, and it should have been a more comfortable win than it was. Now, the reasons they drove the field, I thought this was a really good golf game.
Yep.
Uh, Outdoors in the cold, no one cares. It's
No
not
one cares
relevant to
because
the narrative.
it went
Yeah.
well, so it doesn't matter.
um, but beyond that, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, both really strong games, ravaging the middle of the field.
Yeah.
That was the big story, Amon-Ra, as well as Khalif Raymond, who,
I was so ready for an Isaac Tesla game, and we just went all veterans in this one. We didn't, but shout out Khalif, man. He was good.
yep, that might be the last time we'll see Khalif Raymond in a Lions uniform, and if it was, he went out in a good performance. He was a good soldier for this team, so salute to him.
Yep. Thank you for your
Um,
service.
yep, but yeah, I mean, Goff really effective in this game. The one mistake is the same thing we've talked about many times, which is locking on to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he's got Isaac Tesla. It's 3rd and 20. He's got Tesla for it's about 10 to 15
Well,
yards.
we could honestly break down this whole sequence of events because this this starts with it's a 2nd and 1. The Lions are driving just before the 2-minute warning, and the Bears take their second encroachment. It was Billings, I think, second
Yep.
encroachment penalty of the game. don't see encouragement penalties very often anymore, but we got two from one player in this game, which was pretty funny. And then 1st and 10, one run play takes this game down to the 2 minute warning, and the Lions can drag this game however they want. And instead, you go pass on first down, pass on second down that results in an intentional grounding because Goff and Amon-Ra weren't on the same page, another locking onto Amon-Ra. And then 3rd and 20, Goff just does stuff. He heaves it into probably the worst throwing decision he's made, arguably of the season, because he's been pretty clean when he's been under pressure this year, but just I don't know, just chucks a bad one.
Yeah, and Amon-Ra was hit early on that, but it was also triple coverage, so you're
Yeah.
just not likely to get that call with that many bodies around. So, um, that yeah, it's just you have to slot open. You're playing for a field goal to take the lead at that point, and getting to slob would have gotten you much more comfortably into field goal range, and instead it's an interception. So that was bad. Otherwise, it was pretty good. I was expecting pass protection to be a lot worse, honestly. There's a couple sacks in this game, but it was not like an all-out disaster. That's kind of what my expectation was without Sewell.
Now, is that a compliment to the Lions front, or is that an indictment of the Bears D line?
Could be both. And
They've
yeah, there were
struggled with pressure this year.
yeah, that is true. There, which that could be an interesting discussion point about why the Lions had so much offensive success against the Bears this year.
Yep.
55 points or whatever it was in the first matchup, and then this one not as many points, but tons of yards, tons of
Fun
play up
fact,
and down the
actually,
field.
that week two performance, the only 50 bomb of the season was the Lions against the Bears in week two.
So, and then there were a couple plays more of Goff navigating the pocket well and stepping up. The Gibbs touchdown, the angle route, that was beautiful.
Undefeated.
Yep. So good stuff there. Running game, when they used it, it was fine. 27 carries for 122 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, long of 14. Like it was, they didn't have any explosives, but they were able to generate enough to complement a really effective passing attack. And the Bears just didn't get stops in this game. Lions played a really nice game offensively, fixed the red zone stuff, and it would have been perfect because otherwise it was really nice.
Yeah, I watching that game, I was just laughing because our biggest criticism of the Lions defense over the last number of years is every key down, they're coming out in some variation of cover one, man coverage, and they're going to just, what they're going to do. And I swear the Bears, every single key down, it was CJ Gardner-Johnson manned up on Amon-Ra, and Amon-Ra won that matchup every single time. Also, Khalif Raymond also shattered CJ's ankles on one of those routes, on one of his nice plays over the middle. Like, Gardner Johnson had a tough game, man.
Hate to see it.
I absolutely hate to see it. So the offense, they did their thing for the most part in terms of getting yardage, but that was the last we'll see of Johnny Morton, as Johnny Morton was relieved. We'll get into that a little
Last
bit
we
later.
see of him, we didn't see him.
That's
Did
true.
you see him? Where was he?
He allegedly was at the stadium, but that is
He
the
hasn't been
last.
seen in weeks. His face has been on a milk carton for a while.
Yeah, he's at a CIA black site, like he's just been kidnapped somewhere. But so we'll talk about the ramifications of that in a little bit. The defense pitched a shutout through 3 quarters. Where was this for the last half of a season? That was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people coming into this game expected the Bears to just kind of run over the Lions, and especially on the ground. And then this was
Yep.
a really nice performance from the run defense. 18 carries, 65 yards, that's 3.6 yards per carry, long of 10. I mean, no explosives, nothing.
Well, and it's not a coincidence to me that what have we talked about all season is the problem setting the edge. And DeAndre Swift was the more successful of the two, but whenever Monangai got it up the middle, nothing going for him.
Yeah, and part of that is a really nice final statement from Tyleik Williams. It's been an up and down rookie season to say the least, but he did end it on a high note, and I think he has been better in the second half of the year. And Roy Lopez,
Yep.
good again. So they were nice in the middle of the line. And the Bears didn't try to run it a ton. Part of that was score effects. Like they didn't have a lot of success early, then they fell down. Then by the time they get to the end of the game, they need to start throwing a lot. So run defense did what it was needed to do, what we didn't really expect to see. And then the pass game, wide receivers were just a total non-factor for Chicago in this game. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely nothing to the wide receivers. Really, the only story is the tight ends in this game. That's the only thing that the Bears had, and by tight ends, we really mean Colston
The
Loveland.
one. Yeah.
I mean, Komet had. Did he have a touchdown or was it 2 point conversion? One of the two he had, but
Yeah.
otherwise, it was Loveland. He was awesome in this game. But beyond that, the Lions did pretty well defensively.
Was it Loveland had 50% of Caleb Williams' completions? It was 10 of
Let me
his 20
check.
completion. I'm pretty sure it was 10 of his 20
Yep.
completions. Like,
10 catches on 13 targets for 91 yards.
talk about hyper target. Like, we talk about golf with Amon-Ra. My Lord, was Colston Loveland the only thing that Caleb Williams was interested in this whole game? The I guess he did take a deep shot at one point. Shout out to Avonte Maddox with a great interception in the end zone on a deep shot there. That was like Williams' first interception in 122 attempts or something. Like Williams doesn't really throw interceptions. He's super careful with the football. So to generate a turnover in this game, great for the defense. Um, I'll give some flowers to DJ Reader in his last game as a Lion. He had a couple nice moments. He had a really good moments on the final Bears drive where after the interception, Bears, it's a tie game. They're trying to go down the field to kick a game-winning field goal, and DJ Reader pushes back Drew Dahlman off the snap, which causes Colston Loveland to trip over Dahlman's leg, which it's kind of like a domino effect. Loveland is then unable to get the backside block or be the check down option, whichever, with Rocky Sin coming in off the DB blitz, which forces the pressure, which forces the intentional grounding at the end. So kind of a little pinball effect there. But DJ Reader had a couple nice moments in the run game as well. So as a farewell, because it's pretty evident that he's gone this offseason. He has no interest in coming back, and the Lions don't really need him anyways, with Tyleek being the nose tackle, presumably next season with Roy Lopez. Um, I will say, coming out of this game, that also better be the last time I ever see Derek Barnes play edge. I love the guy, not an edge defender. He's just not. That's not his job. And the Jack Campbell also was a diving interception away from a guaranteed first All
Yeah.
Pro lock. That would have been nice, get his first career interception, but thought he had a good game. Linebackers were a lot better. Rodrigo out there filling in for Anzalone. Like just a solid performance all around.
Well, in run defense,
Yeah.
coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, the linebackers didn't
That
cover well.
yeah, that's the flip side.
That's where you miss Anzalone.
Yeah, because the coverage from Rodriguez was pretty ugly in that regard. But Barnes did have a nice PBU on the fourth down.
Yep.
Want to get that one out there. In the Maddox one, you mentioned the interception, which was really good. Then he was kind of the culprit on that first Bears touchdown.
He giveth and he taketh.
Right, biting on the underneath when you got the deep post, and that one didn't make a lot of sense. Robertson's cooked, and it's over right there. Um, but yeah, I mean, otherwise, this was a pretty just strong showing. Like they didn't commit a lot of bad penalties or anything. They were pretty disciplined. They didn't miss a lot of tackles. They just looked solid. Started to break down there in the fourth quarter, but
Bears just do that.
I mean, the Bears
The
are not a
Bears
bad team. Like they're gonna get some points eventually. You held them
and
down
they're a
for three
fourth quarter
quarters.
team. Yeah, like
Yes, that's the other part of it.
the Bears have this habit of they're kind of like the Broncos where they'll just sleepwalk through three quarters and turn it on at the end of the game. But hey, I mean, doesn't mean you didn't shut them out through three quarters. So
Yeah,
good
and
for
like the 2 point conversion, the second one is just like the vintage Caleb Williams thing of just like the running around or
yeah.
whatever. It is what it is. Rocky Yassin, I thought had a nice game.
Yep.
PBU on a third down early in the game. Then he has a pass rush that leads to the grounding
Yep.
that backs the Bears up, kills their final drive. This isn't really an off-season show yet, but like it makes a
Yeah.
ton of sense to me to bring Rocky Yassin back. I don't know what the price is going to be, but like they need depth at corner.
Yeah.
We can't, you cannot bank on Amik Roberts. I mean, on Ennis Rakestraw playing football games. So in that in that void, you're going to need somebody. And I think yes, I mean, was Rocky Yassin worse than Terrion Arnold this year? I don't think so. I think they were pretty similar players, to be honest with you. Um,
If he was, it wasn't by a lot. Like
no,
Rocky
like
Sin was, he was the second best corner this year.
yeah, I,
He was
I would love
definitely
to
better
bring
than
him
DJ
back.
Reed.
Yeah, and Reed had the injury in the middle of the year, so we'll see. But it was rough before that, and it was
He had moments,
rough-ish at
but
times. Yeah, there were good
like
games, and then there were real bad games.
the thing with Reed is like I I'm partly willing to forgive him because one, the injuries and whatnot, and sometimes guys have bad years and he has a good resume. But also, we're also starting to get an alarming amount of data that guys are just worse when they play in Detroit in this
Yep.
system. So we'll see what it looks like next year. He's going to be here next year. There's no question about that. I'm imagining it's probably going to be you keep one of Amik Robertson or Rocky Sin. I don't know if they'll keep both. They'll probably try. But Rocky Sin and Avonte Maddox, I'm keeping both of them if I can.
Yeah. I mean,
I definitely,
I kind of keep Rocky Sin over Robertson, to be honest with you. Just the way he played this year, I
I
think he
think
deserved
so.
it more. So
Yeah, and
he definitely made a statement in the final game.
I'd be willing. I know there's no reason to trust him, but I'd be willing to let Rakestraw compete for the starting nickel spot if he's healthy. Like he can
Yeah,
compete with
I think that's
someone.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and then
Um,
Maddox gives you that safety depth. He can play in the slot too. So those two
keep
guys both had good performances, and they definitely should be brought back.
I'd keep Harper around too, but that's
Oh
getting
yeah,
into the whole can of
yeah,
worms. Like because the safeties are going to be a huge discussion this offseason because we don't know if they're healthy, if they have just career altering injuries, but that's a whole different discussion. Aiden Hutchinson gets another sack, absolutely just destroyed Caleb on that play. He had a fantastic game. Hutch did. He finishes the season leading the NFL in pressures per PFF with 100, only player to get to 100. He was very disruptive. Darnell Wright could not block him to save his life in this game. Like Hutch was all over the backfield in this one.
yep. Good statement from him at the conclusion of the season. That got him up to 14 and a half. I think was what he
Yep.
finished the season with. So a solid job there. Not an incredible year, but a pretty good one. I would say that I don't think it's too far from expectations, like coming off a major injury, like
I think
personally.
this is probably around what expectations were. We just got there in a really weird way where he started
Yeah.
super hot through the first like 5 or 6 games, and then he forgot how to finish plays for like 8 weeks, and then he closed the season strong. Like it's just hot and cold, and we'll look for the consistency next year, ideally with a more consistent running mate on the other side to help him out, and maybe a healthy Ali McNeil
Right.
to do anything. But another guy I want to shout out. Makai Wingo appeared in this game and he actually did things. He actually got a couple of pressures. He was involved. And I want to say thank you to the Lions organization for freeing that man from wherever he was. Like they probably just swapped him and Johnny Morton there towards the end of the season because Wingo was somewhere for the first like 15 weeks of the season and was barely getting any action. So I'm glad that they still are at least willing to play him a little bit because he does the one thing that no one else on the interior does, and that's rush the passer effectively.
Yeah, and I was the guy earlier in the year clamoring for Wingo. They just never used him for no apparent reason. And then, yeah, turns out he can get after it a little bit. It doesn't make sense why we didn't see him earlier, but whatever.
I mean, he's not good at run
Hopefully,
defense, but
the performance in the final week means that they'll use him some next year because I think they could really use that,
yeah.
especially because I hope they are moving on from Levi Onwuzurike. We don't need to try that one again. This is a guy that could give you a little pass rush inside.
I don't know. Brad Holmes does have a hard on for any guys with injury history. So Davenport and Onwuzurike come back. I saw a stat that I'm pretty sure Davenport, it was like he was averaging like less than a pressure per game with like most like a significantly more or had like the same amount of pressures he had last year, but with like way more snaps, obviously, because he played more this year. That's just nope. We're done here. And Al-Qadim Muhammad, that's an interesting conversation because he has double digit sacks this season. Had a good year, but it kind of feels like Charles Harris 2.0, where it's like that's not repeatable. Like he's never going to do that again.
A flash in the pan situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it was in like 3 games that he got
Yeah.
80% of those. Like it was all or nothing for him. And if he's willing to come back at a really cheap cost, then you do it. But
Sure.
I don't know what his market value is. I don't know how other teams would assess his performance.
I guarantee, regardless of what it is, he will get more money from someone else because the Lions are going to view him as a depth piece that can be a situational pass rusher, and someone is going to look at the sack totals and be like, oh, maybe he can be a starter, and he's not. But I respect him for going to get his bag when he does that this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets it, credit to him.
Yeah. Aside from that, I think that's kind of it for the defense. We'll talk about Kelvin Shepard in a little bit with the coordinator talk, but pretty good way to end the season for him, considering how much fire he was under the last few weeks with how the defense had been playing.
Yeah, I mean, I would still prefer to go outside of the house and pick up a veteran defensive coordinator. But it was a nice statement from Shepard. The last 2 weeks, it I mean, last week was an empty net goal basically in
Yeah.
terms of defensive performance against who you're playing. But they played well, and then they played well in this one. Saves face a little bit. We'll see how Dan Campbell evaluates it, but there's something to be said for your season's over and still having pride to put up a good performance and beat a playoff team, on the road and a
Yep.
game that still mattered. The team got up for it, and that's a credit to the whole coaching staff.
And more importantly, Ben Johnson was pissed after the game. He was like, "We didn't score. Like I don't like why weren't we ready to go?" It was very funny to watch that press conference and be like, "Well, I don't know what." He's like, "I don't know why we didn't perform. We just didn't perform." And I love to see that stuff, especially when it's against a rival. So, the Bears they still retain the 2 seed because the Eagles decided not to play starters against the Commanders in Week 18. That's a whole discussion we'll talk about later. Um, Special teams, game theory. Is there anything major you want to
Uh,
talk about there?
I mean, Bates gets the game winner,
Yep.
42 yards away. He's not been an all-pro kicker, but he's been pretty good for the Lions. The one thing he's been best at, though, are these clutch kicks.
Something to be
Had
said.
what, 3 winners last year? I'm trying to remember. The Minnesota game.
Houston, Minnesota, Houston, Green Bay.
But yep, so 3 last year, and then this one, so that's 4. Pretty good. He's been very consistent in those moments. He did miss from 53, not by a lot. Like it just pushed it.
I'll give him a little bit of a pass for the
It's
weather,
outdoors.
like
Yeah.
outdoors, windy city. Like, sure, you can get a partial pass for that one. Also, should mention the tying field goal he had against the Giants.
Oh,
So,
right. Yep. Yep. So
clutch kicker.
he's been good in those moments. Give him credit. Jack Fox, couple punts, nothing too notable there. Pinned in the 20-1. I mean, good season for Jack Fox. Not a busy return day for Raymond either. There just wasn't much going on special
Yeah,
teams. The only thing was the grounding discussion of there was one with Caleb Williams, the throwaway after the when the snap got away from him
yeah.
and like rolled down to the goal line. He picked it up and threw it. I had no issue with calling that not grounding, but people were furious.
Oh, I don't. I actually, I was gonna say, I kind of agree because how many quarterbacks in the league just fall on that football and take the loss? Like, I respect that Caleb was like, you know what? I'm just gonna chuck it and try to make this a 0 yard play. Like, I fully respect that he was able
Well,
to.
yeah, and people were like, "Oh, that's like it's grounding." He didn't. There wasn't a guy in the area, but I was like, I mean, it was directionally at a guy. It was a little, it was overthrown, but it wasn't like he threw it and there was no guy anywhere close, right? Like the reason the
Yeah,
golf one is the receiver isn't there. The receiver runs the other route. He throws it there. The Caleb Williams one, if he just throws that in the pocket, no one is even arguing for grounding. They're just like, "Yep, he looked for that guy and he way overthrew it." It was
yeah.
only because of the conditions before it, and I was fine letting that one
If he
not
if he throws it out of bounds, that's one thing, but
right.
he chucks it over the middle. Presumably, there's someone, yeah, like there's someone relatively in the. That's fine. Plus, yeah, he got dinged on a grounding like a couple minutes later, so it works out in the end.
Right. So that's about all I had ref in the ref discussion. There weren't a ton of penalties in this game. Just good showing all around. They finished with and this is something I did want to get on the record. They finished with a winning record in 4 straight seasons for the first time since 1969 to 1972. So that's something that matters to me at least.
Oh
This
man,
was
that's such a depressing stat.
this was a frustrating season, but it's still like the seventh best Lions season of my lifetime. So it
So,
shows a
but
lot
that
about where the team is that this sort of year is as disappointing as it is. And it's hard to imagine that years ago.
so to hammer home how sad this franchise's history has been. You said it's the first time they've won four straight. It had
Four
four straight
straight
winning
winning
seasons
seasons. Yep.
since the late '60s, early '70s. Is this the most prosperous era of Lions football ever?
In the Super
Like
Bowl era,
in the Super
yeah.
Bowl era since Bobby Lane.
Yeah. No, I mean no question about it. It
Just
was
because
this or
they're
the 90s, and in the 90s teams only a couple were particularly serious, and even in the 90s they would have right 2 3 good years, then like a
yeah.
6 and 10, and then they'd bounce back. So
If this is rock bottom,
it's
I will not complain.
it's a nice place to be, no doubt about it.
Yep. So, as I mentioned earlier, the aftermath of this game, Johnny Morton is fired. The Lions have started their search for a new offensive coordinator. And so far, we have, at the time of recording this, we have two names on that list. The first one, a bit of a surprise, David Blau, who was the assistant quarterbacks coach with the Commanders, who then took over kind of being the full-time quarterbacks coach towards the end of the season. 30 years old, obviously former Lions backup QB. I'm not questioning how intelligent he is. He will be a coordinator at some point. It just seems a little premature here.
Yeah, it feels too early. I mean, and again, you get the connection with his time in Detroit, but I probably want someone with a little bit more experience would be my preference.
Now, the two most popular OC candidates for the Lions, one of which we know the Lions have met with, that is former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel, who was fired, and the Lions promptly reached out to him regarding their OC position. He is the probably the best offensive mind on the market that you're going to find. Former head coach, obviously, he has that experience that you were just talking about. Another option that a lot of Lions beat reporters, especially, are fond of is Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken, who we don't know his contractual status now that John Harbaugh has been fired by the Ravens, but he is another popular name for his work with the ground game over in Baltimore. So we got the beat reporters on one side that are kind of clamoring for Monken. We've got the fans on the other side and some of the more national analysts that are clamoring for Mike McDaniel. Whether or not it's one of these guys or someone else, which side of that debate do you fall on? Do you want the kind of younger, more like nerdy schematic genius, or do you want the veteran OC, like more like bruising, like been around the block kind, like similar to Morton sort of, but like obviously Monk is different. But in terms of just someone who's been around football for longer, or do you want the new blood, the younger blood in there?
Um, I think it has to be viewed in part through the lens of who we're actually talking about. Like Munkin, I think has had some success with the Ravens, less so the last couple years, but obviously he was the OC when Lamar won the MVP right in 2023, I believe. Was that year right when
Yeah.
they hosted? They were the 1 seed. They hosted the AFC Championship game. Then they lost. And he did really good work at Georgia. I thought I liked him a lot when he was Kirby Smart's OC. Their offense has never reclaimed what it was then. He also was a good head coach at Southern Miss in the mid 2010s. So I think he developed Nick Mullins, I believe, was his quarterback when he was at Southern Miss. So that's an
Lions killer.
interesting. Yeah. So I think Monken fits probably better with what the Lions' identity is. In terms of the like, my thing with McDaniel and Campbell is I don't really see I don't know. McDaniel seems like the kind of guy that Campbell would just be like, I can kick his ass. Like I
Okay, but I mean, like Campbell could also have kicked Ben Johnson's ass. Like it's not like it does.
no, I
It,
just
Campbell
I my
Campbell
thing
could also kick anyone's ass. Let's be honest, unless it's Mike Vrabel.
my thing with McDaniel is I just never respected his Dolphins teams. Like I'm not going to doubt that they were good, that they had good offenses and things like that, but they were just like the antithesis of like the Dan Campbell thing in terms of they were just this like speed, finesse, like we're going to put up 700 yards. Remember when they put up like 70 something on the Broncos, right? And then they would just play real teams and they would just be a fake team that get pushed around. They were undisciplined, they committed penalties. I never thought like I think he's probably a good offensive mind. I think he's better as an OC than a head coach personally.
Oh yeah.
Um, but they just like in Tua and they go in the cold anywhere and it would just crumble like a Jenga tower. And that's just how that kind of fits with the Campbell sort of physicality and what they want to be up front. Like McDaniel to me always struck me as a 7-on-7 coordinator. And Campbell's whole thing was wanting to be good up front, right? And
Hmm.
right, we're gonna run a bunch of gap plays and just be all over you in the trenches. And stylistically, I think Monken fits that a lot better, having just been with Derrick Henry and that sort of rushing attack versus like right Henry versus like the Achan rushing attack
Yeah.
and Tyreek right Tyreek Hill and just the speed right. Miami was a speed team, and I think Campbell's more physicality than speed.
That said, Jameer Gibbs is a lot closer to Devon Achane
That
than he is
is
to Derrick
Devon
Henry.
Achan. You're correct. Yes.
And I saw I forget who said it, but someone made the analogy that the Lions personnel is essentially just Miami's on steroids, which is not inherently wrong. Like Jamison Williams to Jalen Waddle, you can make that comparison. Jameer Gibbs to Devon Achane, you can make that comparison. And you've got Amon-Ra, who's like they like the Dolphins don't have anyone comparable to like an Amon-Ra, just like the Lions don't have a second speedster like Tyreek Hill when he's healthy, but the Lions obviously have better personnel. That's not the debate here. I guess my curiosity with McDaniel is if you don't like he's not the cult like he's not setting the culture here. If you blend his creativity with Campbell's the emphasis on physicality and the Lions organization, like if you can bring McDaniel into that system and into that culture, is the blend of that going to be get you a better outcome than doubling down on just being a physical more I guess fire over like the substance kind of thing here.
Yeah, I think there's truth to it. And if Campbell looks at McDaniel and says, "This is my guy," I think this is going to work. Then I'm all for it because then it sort of fits. I just have as I've thought about it, I've just struggled to see that as a fit, but it could be, and it could be something that he uses McDaniel's best capabilities as a schemer and as an X's
Mhm.
and O's guy and fits it within the parameters. I mean, look, there's no question to me that Gibbs would eat if McDaniel is the OC.
JMO might have 1,600 yards next year if
Right,
McDaniel's.
right, yeah. So there's no question that they would be able to have some personnel that fits to what McDaniel's doing. Um, it's just Monken, like especially you think about Monken at Georgia, right? Like those were teams that leaned on tight ends, physical running
Yeah.
games. Um, I don't know. That just seems like a better fit, but either guy would be great.
Oh yeah.
I've got no issues with those two. It's the David Blau thing that's a little bit more like, yeah, I
See,
don't know
this is
about
the
that.
thing is Monken to McDaniel might be apples to oranges, but we're also picking like the best apple from the from the field, the best orange from the like we're picking the best of those archetypes there that are presumably again, we don't even know if Monken's going to be available. They might promote him to head coach in Baltimore. He might follow Harbaugh. He might like everyone is going to be after both Monken and McDaniel if Monken is available. The good news for the Lions. Is there a more desirable OC job than Detroit? Maybe Washington?
I think it's this one. I mean, Jaden Daniels is obviously talented and all that, but they've got some questions in
Yeah.
terms of their rushing attack, their offensive line. Can Jaden Daniels play a full season?
Yeah. We'll see.
I
I will say
mean,
from Munkin, there were the rumors that he would prefer to play with like have a mobile quarterback at his disposal. So
well,
I
certainly
think
that's yeah, that's a there could be a fit there. I mean, the interesting thing with Monken is he was actually being mentioned as a Michigan football head coach candidate. not that long ago,
Ooh,
like a couple weeks
that
ago.
that actually would be a good fit too. Get back to
So
the
yeah, not, obviously he can't take that job, but I don't know if he has interest in going back to college to be a head coach. I'm not sure what route, he's going to prefer to take. So, um,
yeah. Now, the other avenue for OC, as we'll get more names over the coming days, but the other option is internal promotion, where Scotty Montgomery is a candidate. Like he was interviewing for positions last year. Hank Fraley was too, but I don't think Hank Fraley is the guy for Detroit just because that would probably mean Campbell's still calling plays. So Scotty Montgomery, who is viewed highly in league circles, but do you want another internal hire?
I mean, so I think going through those, Hank Fraley to me doesn't seem palatable simply just because it'd be so different than usual in that you typically don't have OL coaches becoming like
Hmm.
right? Like that's not just it. They don't tend to become coordinators and play callers. Those tend to be different paths. With Montgomery, it's not to say the offense was bad this year, but if you're going to find a new OC, I just sort of say, right, when we replaced Aaron Glenn, the consensus was that Glenn had done a good enough job, and therefore internal promotion is fine because he did a good job. He did a good. The evidence that he did a good job is that he got hired as a head coach. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what
If
evidence is there?
right, you can, but on the flip side, to me, when you are hiring an OC because the last situation was not good, that's why I never want to hire the interim coach to be the head coach in a lot of cases. Just because of the same thing of if he had the solutions, why wasn't he saying them? Right? Like that if he is ready to be the play caller, then why wasn't he ready to be the play caller 6 weeks ago? And I understand that a similar thing played out where Ben Johnson was in the building and Campbell called plays and then he promoted him. And so at the end of the day, I think this is a fairly low stakes search. I would prefer to go outside the building, but I actually
Yeah,
prefer to do that a lot less than I prefer to do it on defense, honestly, because this team still finished with a very good offense. They still piled up a lot of yards, a lot of points with an iffy offensive line. They have a lot of weapons.
it's just the way they got there was way more inefficient than I think they were planning on. They were way too reliant on explosive plays and explosive runs.
Yes, and I think there are certainly things that you can pick apart and point to in that regard. But again, over the period of the season where it sank, 24, 44, 9, okay, 34, 24, 44, 34, 24, 10 with a disastrous OL situation, and then 19, they were bad in the red zone. I mean, there still is so much talent here, and they were good
Yeah.
enough on offense that I feel like just hiring an OC that has a sense of what's going on is fine. Like the reason they need to take the play sheet away from Campbell is largely because he couldn't then be the head coach while he was doing that,
Yeah.
and the decision making and things went downhill. I think most all play callers are going to have a level of success with this group. So you want to get a nice one, but it's not like this offense needs to be completely rebooted. And from
No.
that standpoint, Scotty Montgomery, if that's the way they went, okay, whatever. It's a DC thing that's worth a lot more discussion.
Well, and it's the DC thing that it looks like it's not going to get more discussion from the Lions themselves because it's been almost a week now since the end of the season. Kelvin Shepard's still here. Brad Holmes just had his end of season availability. Campbell's talked this week. Seems like the Lions are presumably going to keep it rolling with Shep.
I'm not. It's not going to stop me from still saying it,
Complaining.
uh, and or at least bringing it up. And
Should put you on 97.1 the ticket.
well, okay. I mean, I don't know if this is a whole. I don't know if this is a Holmes press conference segue, but like, I
Can be.
hated the talk radioification of some of the questions that were being asked at that press conference. Like,
Oh my Lord, some of those questions were awful, especially to start. Like,
I
what are
yeah,
we doing?
how many times he was asked versions of just like why didn't are you or thinking about or why didn't you make a big move at the trade
Yeah, hey,
deadline? It's like,
so
shut
make
up. I
splash.
don't care. Like,
I want like I we went into that press conference being like, man, I can't wait to see like what Holmes is going to say about himself. Like, is there like lessons he's learned? And because he's gotten arrogant at times, is what it's felt like. He's gotten combative with the media at times. He's definitely had that kind of gotcha energy. And instead, we got like 4 or 5 questions about like, so when did you know Ragnar was retiring? And hey, why didn't you make a bigger trade? Do you wish you had just made a splash acquisition in the offseason? Like.
yes, and by the way, that is as we've been talking about at points related to this just like pent up feeling in Detroit sports fans related to big deals that sports fans are yearning for nothing more than a tweet from Shams or, Schefter or whatever. And pick your insider, right? Jeff Passan, whatever sport it is. Like the Tigers went through the trade deadline doing very little. Then there was the whole Red Wings Quinn Hughes thing that passes. And then in the
We're
meantime,
gonna have
there's
another
been
one with the Red Wings too at the deadline with how good they've been.
in the meantime, you had Lions and different trade candidates and endless discussion of Max Crosby, and now we've got to some degree Piston stuff going on too, and it's just like the market just yearns for the feeling that they got when they saw the David Price trade back in like 2014. Like they just want that feeling again to see their team on Sports Center having made a big deal. And so that's just become this big thing, even though in the NFL it's not really a big thing. Like, I mean,
Do we need to
Christian McCaffrey,
remind everyone how upset they were at first when Stafford was traded for Goff?
like the Christian McCaffrey deal was a midseason trade, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And this year we had Sauce Gardner. There's like one a year, maybe.
And yeah, hey,
And
tell me, how did the Colts do down the stretch of that after that Sauce Gardner trade? How did they finish?
so the discussion about like he needs to just push the chips in, and if he doesn't do that, they'll always be second. Like, no, no, that like the Eagles win the Super Bowl in large part because they crushed drafts.
Yep.
And they got Jalen Carter, and they got all these other Georgia guys, and they got Cooper DeJean, and they got Quinion Mitchell. And yes, they did get Saquon, although that was a free agent signing, if I
Free agent.
remember
That's the
correctly. Yeah, that wasn't a
Giants just
trade.
being.
Yeah, they were being gifted him. And again, like the Rams, what big move have the Rams made to reposition themselves, or what big move have the Seahawks made to reposition themselves? What this franchise needs is Brad Holmes to go draft 2, 3 impact starters in the upcoming
Yep.
draft. That's what we need, not a big trade deadline move. We need big time players out of the draft.
Well, and how many times do the Lions have to say this for people to believe it? The goal is not to win one Super Bowl. The goal is to be competitive for years and years and build a sustainable winner. That's what they're trying to do. Again, 4 straight winning seasons. That doesn't happen on accident. That happens from developing a good program. Now, obviously, you can criticize them for maybe they didn't make they don't have the right combination to take them over the top. And yes, that is true. But like, what are we doing? Like, what the Lions are not going to trade for Max Crosby this summer. I don't know what people are expecting. That's going to be
Yep.
and it's going to be a talking point because of the Crosby with the Raiders rumors. Guys, wake up. Like, I hate there's a difference between the beat reporters. Like, it's tough. We have to like categorize them differently because I view the guys like Pride of Detroit guys or Colton Pouncey a lot differently than I view like the talk show guys, right? Because one batch of them are like talking logically and rationally, and the others are talking out of their ass. So
Yeah, I just wanted to hear more specific questions
yeah,
about um, specific things with the team, right? Like the defensive
yep.
approach and the coordinators and the coverages they run and just stuff like that. And even when they talked about the edge situation where Holmes had a quote that I didn't listening live, I didn't really catch it that much, and then that ends up being the quote that is circulating about how like we're going to have a similar approach to edge or whatever.
Well, and
And
but it's taken out of context too, because Holmes was like, yeah, there were things that we tried to do in the draft and it just didn't work out the way we wanted to. That's what happens when you're drafting at the end of the first round. Sometimes your guy's not going to fall to you. And so he's saying we're going to repeat that approach where it's like, we're going to have the guys that we like and we're going to try to get them.
yeah, I did
But
think that was a really interesting part of the press conference, him talking about the things that we did that weren't possible. And I I like those in the NFL draft sense more than I like them when like there's an NHL trade deadline thing. It's like, oh, we were 80% of the way to getting this player and then we
we
just
didn't
couldn't
add a
do it.
conditional seventh round pick to
Yeah.
get it over the line.
We couldn't clear the cap space. We couldn't okay, we we'll take your word for it. But
Yeah.
in the NFL, it's much more real because if you think about it, wind the clock back to the 2023 draft. How different would the Lions be if the Seattle Seahawks take someone else and the
Then
Lions
Devin
select
Witherspoon.
Devin Witherspoon and the Lions suddenly now have a franchise corner and they don't have Jameer Gibbs?
DeAndre Swift is probably still here.
It's like there's so many chain
Yep.
reaction
No
things that would
Laporta either,
happen.
because remember, it was the 34th pick that they got in a trade down for Gibbs and Laporta. So there would be no Sam Laporta either.
Yep, and Devon Witherspoon, like by all accounts, was their guy. Like
Yeah.
that's who
Oh,
they wanted.
absolutely.
And yep,
Yeah. That, like,
and Gibbs was like
I'm
the backup
confident in
plan.
saying that the Lions were like, Witherspoon might have been second on their board behind Will Anderson that year.
Yeah. So that's just the stuff that happens. And it changes course. And maybe last year they had some guy that was really high on their board and then he got taken. They went a different direction. We'll never know. But in this way that he approached it in terms of we're going to try different options at edge, until we know what those options are, it's hard to.
Yeah.
All it means is they're not trading for Max Crosby. Well, we knew that. So, okay. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
But that's all the media wanted to talk about today is like, well, are you going to make a big move? No. Are you sure?
well, and the other takeaway I feel like from this press conference is the way that he was just kind of like, I messed up. I take responsibility. And they're like, what did you mess up? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I don't
And I
know.
get
This
I get why, you have to proceed carefully. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
right, the Michigan had an interim head coach a couple weeks ago named Biff Poggi who was got in some controversy, and the defenders are always for being frank, and all these people are like, oh, but he tells it like it is. And it's like, okay, we don't need that. Like, you can't have a truthful GM in those press conferences because
Well,
he
and that's
can't
the
go out there and be like, well, you know what, I messed up. I signed that fucking bum, like, Marcus Davenport. Why did I believe in that loser? That's never
well,
gonna
this
happen.
this is the Campbell thing, right? Because like Campbell's very honest in press conferences, and that's rare. You want guys that are honest to their guys in the organization that lie to the media every single day. You want someone who's going to go to Marcus Davenport and be like, "You're a fucking bum," and then like you get out of here. But they go to the media and be like, "Yeah, we really liked them, but it just didn't work out." Like that's how.
Right.
So there are two interpretations of the Holmes presser. Number one, which and again, this is going to depend on how you interpret Holmes in the past with the media. The first interpretation is that he has to still go through that internal process. Him and Campbell recognize that something is wrong, that they have messed something up, and now their job over the next few weeks is going to be internalizing all of this and evaluating themselves first and foremost. The other interpretation is that Holmes is just saying what he has to say to the media, but privately is like, I got this still.
Yeah, I mean that's the concerning angle to it, that he's, quietly more confident. But I
Well,
thought the
and
way
that's what he
he
said at the end, though. I just like he was like, we're not that far.
well, and
Like,
I don't think that's wrong. I mean, I think he
no.
started fine, but then, he ends it and says, I think we're not that far and we need to just make some tweaks. And I think it's clear that they understand that this wasn't good enough, and now we'll see
Yeah.
what their method is to rectifying that.
It's also clear that they are very cognizant of the fact that they could go too far with their corrections this offseason, and they don't want to stray too far from where they have been and what they've been building. Because if you swing that pendulum too far, suddenly you get away from what you've been and what got you here, and that's where bad things happen.
Yeah, although I think something that's worth talking about, and we've sort of mentioned this, is that to some degree, to get back to where they sort of want to be, they need to embrace things from the past as opposed to like course correcting, like just
Yeah.
on field stuff. We talked about the penalties, we talked about discipline and,
Yep.
tackling and just attention to detail. And it felt like the run defense itself, right? That slipped
Yeah.
during the right things that a few years ago they were good at, they weren't good at. So to fix, they actually don't need to go some new direction. They just need to figure out how to get that kind of focus and discipline back. And that's something I thought that Holmes maybe alluded to when he talked about things we change may not be apparent, at
Yeah.
the right. Maybe that's practice routines, training regimens, whatever it is. But I do think that's a quietly big part of this.
Yeah. And I guarantee, like, there's no way Dan Campbell's going to stay. Anything, like, if there was any sort of slip in training camp this year, like, Campbell is this, like, the training camp the Lions are going to run next offseason is going to be the most, like, anal, like, detail oriented thing on earth because Campbell's not, he's going to be like, you know what? Nope, I don't care. You guys are doing good. We aren't good enough yet. Like, we saw what happened last year. Like, the demand for excellence going into next season is going to be at a new level because of the disappointment that they experienced. I did want to finish the Holmes discussion with the last note, which is on something that we've and everyone's been frustrated with, the projects. Because for one, the obvious discussion that came out about Taylor Decker, what do you like? What's the like? Are you prepared for him to retire? And Holmes was like, yeah, like we probably aren't going to want to start Giovanni Manu if that happens. And that brings us into the project discussion. Lions have taken a lot of project players that haven't really worked out. And Holmes does not seem dissuaded by that approach at all. He just says, hey, if we like them, we're still going to take them. So I'm expecting another one or two projects in the draft this year.
I mean, I think I've said this in the past and discussions with people about Holmes's draft philosophy that when the hit rate is as good as it is, you kind of have to swallow the losses because presumably the losses are tied to the logic of the wins, right? That
Yep,
whatever their approach that's generating the good things is also likely linked to the approach that's generating the bad things. It's really easy to just say like pick the good players and then just don't pick the
exactly.
bad ones and we'll be great. And like okay. um However, as the hit rate has dipped, maybe that leads to a reevaluation. Especially though with like the talk of the projects, it's really just two that we're talking about in particular. Like the trade up with Tesla is a one discussion. That's a
It's
discussion in and of
but
itself.
that's a TBD one.
Right. No. So my thing with that one is that like I don't have an issue right now with that project pick because like I think he's going to be good. Like I just right
Sure.
now the amount of touchdowns he had, his hands, I saw enough to think that he will develop into probably a really good player. I think if they had taken him in the round or fourth round, whatever, and not traded up, I don't think there would be a lot of talk about that pick whatsoever. Right? Like
No,
it
it's
was
a
just the
three
fact
first
they
round pick or three, yeah, three third,
that's
yeah.
why it's talked about. And the Sorsdal one, like whatever, it's just he was like a 6th round pick. All 6th round picks to some degree are projects. Like the chance they're going to be impactful NFL players is not very high. So we're really just talking about Manu and Martin. Those are like the two certified projects.
Do you throw Hooker in that conversation? Because I know he was older, but he was a project to an extent.
I mean, I don't know, like not to the same degree. I don't feel like he was a starting quarterback at a major school that
I mean, my
finished like
problem
an
with the Hooker pick was you have Jared Goff. Why are you taking a QB in the third round?
yeah. That's the biggest part of it to me. I mean, maybe he's a project, but again, like are all 3rd round pick, 4th round, 5th round quarterbacks kind of projects? I don't know. It
Yeah.
wasn't though. It wasn't to the degree where Broderick Martin was like a guy no one had talked about much, and like Sorsdal obviously played at William and Mary. Manu was playing in Canadian college football, and Martin played at least in the FBS at WKU, but obviously not super high level and wasn't talked about much. Like he was a guy they saw at the Senior Bowl, and he like wasn't on draft boards really, and it was kind of like, who is this guy?
I guess that's the other part of it, right? Is it's not just that they're taking projects in the third, fourth round, but they're taking projects that were projected to not be drafted in the third and fourth round. They are reaching for these guys.
Yeah, And to Slaw, at least, he was supposed to be like a fifth rounder, maybe, and they reached a couple rounds early. When you get to
Yeah.
that territory, this gets into the like Jack Campbell Gibbs thing, where you can never
Yeah.
bank on some team. Oh, he would have fell 2 rounds. Just trust me. Okay, you don't until we know all 32 teams draft boards.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say that. But was Manu going to be picked by anyone else? I have no clue. Like it's hard to say. Probably not. Maybe.
Well, what was funny is everything coming out of that draft after was like everyone was scouting the other British Columbia tackle. They weren't even focused on Manu, and then the Lions were just like, "Wow, this kid is unbelievable."
Yeah. So I don't know. At the end of the day, he just needs to hit on some picks. Like that's
Yeah.
I don't really care if it's a project or not a project. He just needs to get it right. And
Yeah.
that's the big question.
Well, and again, like it's back to the early drafts, right? Like Derek Barnes was a project pick, bit of a reach too at the time, and he's developed into a starting level linebacker that they've extended. Kirby Joseph was a ball of clay pick. That was he was a rangy safety that would play 20 yards off the line at Illinois, and they just said, "Aaron Glenn, here you go develop that guy." And Kirby Joseph's developed into one of the better well, like arguably the best ball hawk in the league. So it's not that these projects can't work. It's but when you reach for guys and it doesn't work out, it just looks worse than it probably actually is.
Yeah, it's definitely harder to tolerate in that situation. So I liked the humility that he showed at the start of the press conference. Then later on, it was less, I don't know, less detailed and so harder to grasp. Of all of the takeaways, I thought maybe the biggest one. I mean, the thing about offensive line that they're prioritizing that makes sense. I'm not really
Yeah, they
surprised.
have to.
But the big one that stuck out to me was the discussion about David Montgomery. That was one of the only times they talked frankly about a player, and it seems like he might be gone based on what was said.
He has to request a trade. Even if he wants to stay in Detroit, he has to request a trade because he needs to, like, there's two options. Either you request a trade and the Lions are like, we're going to play you more. Okay, I'll stay. Or the Lions are like, nah, Gibbs is our guy. Okay, then trade me to somewhere where I can start.
Yeah, and I think
You're paying him to be a starting running back. You're paying him like 6 million bucks a year, 7 million bucks a year. It's play him or get rid of him. You can't do this nonsense again.
yeah, I'm a big Montgomery guy. I want him on the team, but if they're going to use him in the nonsensical fashion they did this year, then he should be traded because he's too expensive to just be sitting on the bench.
Yep. It was And if they trade him, that is on like that probably the most frustrated I've been with Dan Campbell in the last few years is just the mismanagement of David Montgomery, who is a good running back and he will continue to be a good running back. And if the Lions don't want him, someone is going to be very thankful that the Lions traded him to them.
You might get your Tesla a third round pick back if you trade David Montgomery.
Yeah, one of them, one of the three that you spent on Tesla. Um, Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, maybe the Lions will somehow get some like compensatory picks if Ray Agnew gets hired to be a GM somewhere. I don't know. But yeah. Is there anything else
If you're
from
if you're Brad Holmes, like how are you not like getting Dave Burkett and whoever to like write just like infinite puff pieces about Ray Agnew? Just like Ray
because you want
Agnew
to
is
keep him around?
the smartest guy I've ever seen. I would not be a good GM if not for Ray Agnew.
I would
Like,
do the complete opposite. If you want a Ray Agnew in the building, I'm putting out a hit piece. Like Ray Agnew is actually the
no,
worst
I'm
person
saying
I've
I'm
ever
saying
met.
you need to get him hired. Get
Yeah.
those two third round picks. Like
Yeah. Well, we don't know how instrumental Ray Agnew is in the front office. That's why I'm a little like what
hard
I
to
don't know.
know.
It's tough, right? Like, is this a situation where we should be considering promoting Holmes to keep both and or like promoting both of them, or is this Ray Agnew's a replaceable part? We have no idea. So that's it's difficult to know the inner workings of front offices because obviously that's not public and never will be public, but oh, who knows?
Hard to know.
Now, as we get into some more general NFL topics, we don't need to waste time with any of the meaningless Week 18 games. We can just get into the nitty-gritty and then talk about the playoffs. So, the NFC South, because it is the dumbest thing ever, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeat the Carolina Panthers on Saturday. And then the Falcons defeat the Saints, and the Panthers get into the playoffs. Anyways, at 8-9, it is the most beautiful thing in the world when you get an 8-9 team in the playoffs because it just, I don't know, it makes me smile every time it happens. But good for the Panthers. Panthers, up and coming team. They are probably in the playoffs more prematurely than they ought to be, given where they are in their kind of building process. However, good for them. They get to host a playoff game, and good for Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young more than most, so I'm happy that that guy's going to be in the playoffs. But the Buccaneers are probably the more interesting story here because they retain Todd Bowles but fire every other coach. So they're letting Todd Bowles rebuild his staff. What are the Bucks doing?
Yeah, bizarre to me. I I can't remember a coach juggling like changing both coordinators and staying on in
It's
the
more than the
NFL.
coordinators. Like it's
Yeah, like
everyone.
right. It's like Jim Harbaugh did it at Michigan, but like college football a little different. Like head coaches, especially in that era, were so powerful that you could kind of just do that. And if the coach, I Todd Bowles hasn't achieved enough, right? Like I feel like if Andy Reid wanted to change both coordinators right now, like he'd be able to do that. Like, but Bowles hasn't won Tampa Bay a Super Bowl. He hasn't been to a Super Bowl as a head coach. It really felt like a change was going to come in his job, but maybe they told him like we're keeping you, but you have to shake up the staff. A very odd approach.
Okay, so let's run through the scenario. Bowles is retained. He replaces the whole staff. The Buccaneers have a disappointing year next year. Bowles gets fired. They nuke the whole staff again. Like what?
Yep, that
What?
seems like a very probable outcome to this
I,
situation.
I would hate to be a young player in Tampa Bay. Like Emeka Egbuka, I'm so sorry. Your development's just being stunted. Jalen McMillan, I'm sorry. Anyone that gets drafted by Tampa Bay this year, I'm sorry. That's a horrible spot to be in. So much pressure on Bulls next year, and he's gonna start the year next season at like a 7 on the hot seat scale. Like, what are it's very bizarre. So you do your thing, I guess. The other Saturday game, the Seattle Seahawks completely stifled the San Francisco 49ers and they win the NFC West. They win the one seed in the NFC. Sam Darnold, he he failed in this situation last year. He game manages his way to winning it this year, but that Seahawk defense, wow, I've never seen a team play so much nickel and be so good against the run.
Yeah, Mike McDonald is he is a dude. Great job as a head coach for Seattle. I still am just kind of like Seattle's in the one seed? Like, really?
Well, someone had to be it. In a year
uh
where there's no real top dogs in the NFL, there's no real Super Bowl favorites. Sure,
I'm
someone's
I'm
got to.
still doubting that they can, make it or win the Super Bowl, but like honestly, maybe Darnold doesn't have to be great if their
He
defense
does.
is just that good, right? Like
Yeah,
that
he does not. He has to just not turn the ball over. That's the only thing he has to
game
do.
manage his way there.
Yeah. So good for the Seahawks. They, as I mentioned earlier with the Bears, they lose to the Lions, but they retain the 2 seed as the Eagles just decided they didn't feel like playing starters. This is a very it's the different approaches, right? Ben Johnson's like, we're here to play football, we're playing our starters. Nick Sirianni's like, nah, I'm good. But
I f-
but
yeah,
the
I feel
Eagles
like
are
the
healthy.
Eagles Yeah, I feel like the Eagles just care less about seeding and that kind of thing. Like they've been through it, they've won Super Bowl, they've been to the Super Bowl. The Bears are a younger team. They want a better seed. They want the guys to stay in rhythm, like all that kind of stuff. I just kind of feel like that's probably a bit of the story.
Yeah. Aside from that, there's not a ton of stuff we have to mention. Myles Garrett got the sack record. Finally got that. It took him a couple of games once he was sitting at 22, but he finally gets to 23. So good for Myles Garrett. Um, the Rams win to because the Niners lost to the Seahawks. We that means that the Rams move past them to the 5 seed and they'll play the Panthers. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. The Broncos defeat the Chargers. So the Broncos are the 1 seed in the AFC. Sure, I guess. It's another
Hey,
weird one.
Broncos Seahawks Super Bowl. Let's run it back.
Yeah, well,
2013 all over again.
another popular pick is Seahawks Patriots. Let's 2014. Like, let's just run back the Legion of from the Legion of Boom to what? Like, I guess how do we classify this new Seahawks? The Legion of Zoom because they're faster. I don't know. But then the drunkest, dumbest. Of course, it was an AFC North finale game of all time. Ravens and Steelers, where Chris Boswell misses an extra point that allows the Ravens to push downfield to attempt a game-winning field goal instead of game tying. And Tyler Loop, the rookie kicker, loops it right on a 44-yard kick. Steeler bullshit never dies. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are your AFC North champions. And as a result, John Harbaugh gets fired. It seems like the Ravens chose Lamar over Harbaugh. And it's kind of funny to think that if Loop makes that kick, it's probably Mike Tomlin kicking the can.
Yeah, I'm just crazy, like amazed at how this game actually went down, like how much scoring there was in those
Oh,
final
yeah.
4 or 5 minutes, considering teams that have not had the most exciting offenses this year. So
Busted coverages galore.
very
Defense was
strange
optional.
way for it to end. But hey, uh, neither of these teams were going anywhere in the playoffs. So
Well, speaking of the playoffs, the wild card weekend is always a chaotic time in the NFL, but this year it might be as chaotic as it can possibly get because, as we have mentioned, there's not really a true Super Bowl favorite. The Seahawks are technically the favorites, but eh, just doesn't like they're definitely not a class above the rest of the league. Like we've dealt with the Chiefs for so long that it's like, yeah, the Chiefs are going to make it out of the AFC. This is as wide open a year as you can possibly have. So, starting with the AFC, again, Broncos on the bye this week. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Houston Texans on Monday night, which will be the most beautifully ugly football that you've ever watched in your life because the Texans boast arguably the best defense in football and the Steelers are the Steelers. So that's going to be a field goal galore. We've got the New England Patriots against the LA Chargers, a fascinating 2-7 matchup. And then the Jaguars versus Bills, which might be the best matchup of the whole weekend. I don't, fascinating matchups.
yeah, so what's interesting to me about the AFC in particular is you look at these teams, you need the Patriots to not make the Super Bowl, like just because it's the Patriots. And I would say that about the Steelers, but we don't need to say that about the Steelers. They're not making the Super Bowl.
I
But you
don't
look
even
at
think they're
those
making it out of this weekend.
you look at those other five teams. The Chargers haven't made it in 30 years. Texans have never made it. Jaguars have never made it. Bills haven't made it in 30-ish years. And then you have the Broncos who have made it, last about a decade ago. On the other hand, in the intervening time, they were the least serious team in the NFL. So it doesn't really feel like we just went through an, era of Broncos dynasty or whatever. I would be totally fine with any of these five teams making it. Like I really like how we don't have Kansas City, we don't have Baltimore, and I'm just ready to see what happens. Like this is not many bad scenarios in the AFC.
Now, I don't care who comes out of the AFC. What I will say, for the love of God, Josh Allen, this has to be
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah.
This is this is like there's no excuse. You are not going to get an easier path than this. Now I know the Jaguars are really good, but like there's no Mahomes. Your boogeyman is not present. If you do your thing, you can go all the way. So if it doesn't happen this year for the Bills, and it probably won't because their run defense is awful, but it's it's going to be unfortunate. The interesting thing for me with the AFC, the Patriots, 14 win team. They beat one team that was over 500, and they also lost to them because it was the Bills.
That's just a
House
crazy stat. How is that possible?
14 wins, and one of them was over 500. That's impressive. What did their win per their strength of schedule finish at? Like a 380.
Let me
It
pull it
was
up.
it was bad. It was no like it was like 3 points below the Broncos. Like it was crazy. So it's a weird matchup because the Chargers offensive, like the Chargers fully healthy, I honestly would probably take to beat the Patriots, but the Chargers offensive line is dead. So, eh,
New England 391 strength of schedule. Next worst was Broncos 422.
you're never going to see that again. You're straight up never going to see that again. That is such a unique blend of circumstances that I'm just amazed. So,
It basically it required them to get the two worst divisions in the NFL on their schedule, AFC North and NFC South, plus fourth place schedule, plus the fact they're in the division with the Jets and Dolphins. That's how they got there.
yeah, so good for them. So let's go through some picks here. Texans versus Steelers. Who you got?
Texans. I just think
Uh,
that defense is going to smother Pittsburgh's
yeah,
offense.
defense wins championships.
It'll be a
Patriots,
nasty,
Chargers.
nasty game, but
Oh yeah, it's a
uh,
12-9 game.
um, I kind of want to pick the Chargers.
Is
I
this your
feel like
Michigan bias towards Harbaugh showing?
no, like I just feel like you're right, like young team, first time in the playoffs versus a veteran coach, and but at the same time, I picked the Chargers last year over the Texans, and they did not reward me, so I will go with the Patriots.
Yeah, healthy. You know what? No, I'm doing it. I'm going Chargers. I believe. I
Okay.
believe that I think their defense is good enough to give the Patriots some problems, and I think Herbert can ball out enough to do something there. Jaguars Bills. Now, first of all, over or under 1,000 points.
It's great. Like this one is such an interesting matchup. I still don't know how it goes to show you the level of parity in the league in the sense that didn't the Jaguars have the number two pick last year?
Uh,
Right when they got Travis
no.
Hunter?
Oh, they traded up for it.
Okay, they traded up for it. I mean,
Yeah. He's not here, but he's hurt, but that's not
right. I
relevant. But yeah,
mean, but like
they
that
were in
was
the
a
bottom
team,
10.
yeah, that was at the top of the draft last year, and now here they are with 13 wins somehow. And I
Hottest
don't know.
team in football.
Yeah, they're hot. They're coming in. I'm still going with the Bills. I just feel like I don't know. I'll just bet on Allen.
So a couple things. Number one, Jags have the best run defense in all of football. So James Cook is not going to be as big of a factor as he could have been. They also forced the second most takeaways behind the Bears. So if it is going to be a high scoring game, one or two takeaways could be the difference. But for another, since Jacoby Myers got to Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence has looked like the generational prospect he was billed as. I am not like, do the Jags have enough X factors on this team? Maybe, maybe not. Brian Thomas Jr. is just irrelevant now behind Myers and Parker Washington and Brenton Strange at tight end. Like you've got other pass catchers that are in there. The Jags have been so hot and they're playing really good football. They're a more complete. If this is the ultimate like roster construction versus superstar, like it's Josh Allen versus the world on in this matchup. And I don't know if I trust Josh to play fully flawless football for 4 quarters. He's capable, but that's a tall mountain to climb, so I'm going to take the Jags.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair argument. That one looks like a toss-up game. I mean, they got Jags or Bills -1 is the spread on that one. So
That's a fascinating one. Now, NFC, our friends in the NFC North, the Packers are a rare 7 seed favorite on the road in Chicago
that
Saturday
statement alone
night.
is incredible.
I cannot believe a 7 seed is favored in the first round, but against a division rival that has beat them this year. Granted, it took a Jordan Love injury to or concussion for that to happen. Bears Packers. How are we feeling about this one?
Well, I think that the Packers are clearly a better football team. I would say in the two matchups that was pretty apparent. What the gap is the Bears have the team of destiny thing going on, and the Packers have had the least dog of any team in the NFL consistently under Matt LaFleur. That's what this comes down to. It's what we saw last time these teams played. That even with Malik Willis, the Packers were the better team. They had the game in the bag, and they found a way to blow it. And I've been watching Green Bay playoff meltdowns with extreme joy for 15 years. I've seen many different scripts, and this one has a lot of that potential. So it should be Green Bay that wins this game, but it may well be Chicago. Um,
Now, based on how these teams both play football, respectively, how is this going to go any differently than the game that Chicago won in overtime, where the Packers are going to get a lead, and then they're going to go in the fourth quarter, the Bears are going to storm back, and then we're going to get a photo finish?
Seems quite possible if that's the way it will go. And I'm going to lean Green Bay, though. I think they're good enough that they'll survive this one. It wouldn't shock me if Chicago gets it just some weird
See,
stuff.
I'm gonna lean on the fourth quarter BS.
Yeah, sure.
I'm leaning on the voodoo magic. I don't think Chicago is long for the playoffs in general, but they can get over Green Bay. I think they can do that. So, and they're at
Is
home. I'll
there
give the
is their last playoff win the 2010 divisional round?
well, because in 2018 they had the double doink. Well, I guess, man, I when it comes to voodoo magic, I hitched my horse to the wrong team. I don't,
Yeah.
this is not the team I should be banking weird universal crap on, but it's been a long time.
Let me Google that real quick.
Wait, was the last time
Yeah,
that these
it was when they beat Seattle to advance to the NFC Championship game.
was it the last time these two teams, Packers and Bears, played in the playoffs? Wasn't that the game BJ Raji got a pick six?
Yeah, that's the game I'm referring to, the one where Jay Cutler got knocked out and Caleb Haney had to come in and play.
Oof. Well, uh okay, so I think we've concluded there's going to be something weird's happening in this game, guaranteed.
Yep.
Um, next up, we've got a tale of polar opposites. We've got the Eagles and Niners. The Eagles, who have a very mediocre offense but a great defense. The Niners, who have a very good offense but a very injured and beat up defense. Granted, the Niners also have outside a coach that's very good until the Super Bowl, so that means that he's good for Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting game. I mean, along with the Bills and Jags, probably the best one of the weekend. Eagles by 5 is what I see here. I mean, they're the
That's
home team.
aggressive line.
Yeah, it feels a bit much to me. I haven't liked the vibes with the Eagles all year. I don't know that the Niners are an incredible team, but I kind of like them in this matchup. Um, I'm not sure why, really. Just kind of a vibes feeling.
This feels so similar to the year that Matt Patricia took over the Eagles defense and then they lost to the Bucks in
Yep.
2023. I think I'm tailing you on that. The one thing I will say, if there was ever a time for the Eagles offense to wake up and do literally anything, the Niners are so beat up that it would make sense that it would be now. However, I don't trust them. I simply don't trust them. And I definitely do not trust Jalen Hurts. So give me the Niners.
Yeah, it just feels like with the Eagles. I mean, they won a few games there late in the year over the Raiders, Commanders, who were not serious, and then they beat the Bills, but like kind of against their will. Like, and that's like you look at their wins since their bye week. Outside of those two against Raiders, Commanders, they have good wins over Lions, Packers, Bills. All three of them are just like horrible games that
They
you're just
they
watching
win
that and you're
ugly.
just like the Eagles are trying to lose this game and they can't do it. And it scares me a lot. And the Niners have been real hot down the stretch until they kind of face planted in that last game against Seattle. So I'll lean with the Niners on this one.
And then last but not least, Panthers, Rams. Now the Panthers did beat the Rams earlier this season. So the biggest question is, can they do enough on fourth down to magically stay in this game?
And get was it? Did they have two interceptions against Stafford in that
Yeah.
previous meeting? So that's I look teams with losing records to make the playoffs have been surprisingly frisky in those playoff games.
Rico Dowdle Beastquake is about to happen.
There's that one that people remember, but then uh, You also have in 2014, people will forget that the Panthers made the playoffs with a losing record. This is the second time that it's happened. They played a beaten up Arizona team that had the backup quarterback, but the Panthers did win that one. Um, and then 2020, the Washington football team played a surprisingly competitive game with Tom Brady and the
That was the
eventual Super
Taylor
Bowl
Heineke
champion,
game.
the Taylor Heineke game, yes. And then Buccaneers a few years ago, that one didn't go as well for them. But you can even lump in the 8-8 Broncos who won the AFC West and then beat Pittsburgh in the Tebow to Demarius Thomas game.
Rest in peace,
So,
Demarius Thomas.
yeah, there's just been this history of bad teams that people don't believe in making the playoffs and then suddenly doing something if they're at home, right? Like the 8-8 wild card team is not serious, but the Rams will win this, but it could be closer than we think. That's my statement.
We Carolina's got to be begging for just awful weather. You got to make this game as ugly as possible. You need this to be pouring rain. You need this to be cold and like wet. You need Stafford wearing gloves. You need something. You need some help from the world to from Mother Nature a little bit here, but you also have to rely on the fact that the Rams, probably the most talented team in the entire playoff picture, seldom play up to that talent and their potential. That Panthers game that they played earlier that we talked about being one of the reasons why, like, if the Rams play up to their potential, they are winning the Super Bowl. There's no one that's going to stand in their way. However, I don't have faith that they're going to do that consistently enough.
Yeah, um, I think the Rams get through this one, but their shine has faded quite a bit for me over the last few weeks. Like, are they still probably the best team or most talented? Maybe, but their ability to win three playoff games on the road, I'm not sure now.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I
but
will
we'll
say
see.
Rams are going to win this game. I am absolutely taking the Panthers to cover, though. 10.5, absolutely taking Panthers to cover that. I think it'll be a yucky game.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy.
Now, Super Bowl pick. What do you got for a matchup, and who do you got winning?
Ugh. Um, man, picking an NFC team alone is so hard because like I don't believe in these NFC North teams, don't believe in the Eagles, don't believe in the Panthers. So now I got to pick someone from the NFC West. Maybe it is just a Seattle. Maybe that's who I'll go with. Like they'll be at home, they'll have the home crowd and the whole thing. Defense wins championships. Let's go with the Seahawks. And then in the West. No, not in the West. In the AFC,
AFC.
yeah, no, my brain is
You're too NHL coded.
no, it's basketball hockey season. So, in the AFC, I'm gonna roll with the Bills.
All right.
And they'll lose on Sunday just to spite me, but I don't know. Feels like their year. Like this has to be right. Like Allen's entire legacy has to
Is
be on
this
the
year,
line. Yeah,
which is pressure's never been higher, but
I feel
now
like that'd be a great Super Bowl matchup, though. In part of just like the face of the league MVP
yeah,
quarterback against like a team with a guy that everyone was dunking on a year ago at quarterback with like the defense. And
yeah,
in that way a sort of replay of Seahawks Broncos in some capacity.
yeah. I in the NFC now, first of all, did you see the report that the Bills are going to consider firing McDermott if they go one and done in the playoffs and replace him with Harbaugh? And there was also that report that the Packers, if they go one and done, will fire LaFleur for Harbaugh, which would be hilarious to see. But and that would be
Well, and
peak
then there
Packers.
was there was a clip tonight of during the Fiesta Bowl between Miami and Ole Miss that Jackson Dart was seen on the sideline being asked who the new coach is, and people were like, his lip reader said it's Stefanski or Harbaugh. So that's add the Giants to everyone's getting uh
Harbaugh, yeah.
Harbaugh.
There,
He will be
the
coaching five teams next year.
the report, like before a bunch of guys got fired, was like, yeah, 7 teams are considering hiring him. It's like there's only so many vacancies. It's like there's a team that wants to hire him that's employing a coach right now, but um, he's been a coach for a long time, so that'd be interesting. As for me, oof, I think I'm just gonna have to ride with the talent of the Rams.
Sure.
Part of me wants to be a sicko and pick the Panthers because BS magic, but um. And that's the same argument for the Steelers. It's just voodoo magic and Steeler bullshit. But I'll take the Rams out of the NFC. I think they're just too talented, and Stafford is playing too well for them to not make it out. In the AFC, I'm torn, weirdly enough, between the two South teams, between the Texans and the Jags. I love the Texans defense so much. Like they are so good, and I think but that offense just sketches me. I think the Jags are just playing some really good football, so I'm gonna have it be Jags Rams in the weirdest matchup that anyone could have possibly imagined, and I'm gonna have the Jags get their first Super Bowl. Why not? There's gonna be let's go cat teams.
Yeah,
So
that would the club would be getting smaller for the Lions if the Jags make it out of it.
yeah, so that is going to be
Thankfully, the Browns will be in the club forever, so we don't have to. We'll always have them.
Yes, the Browns they're just screwed. As soon as they had the whole Deshaun Watson thing, that was their Bobby Lane curse. That was them signing their own death warrant for the next 50 years. Like they're never winning anything. Um, but don't tell Deion Sanders that. He will have you convinced that Shador is the Messiah. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you made it this far, be sure to hit like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Hit follow and leave us a review if you're on a podcasting platform. You can follow the show at Payne and Drain on Twitter. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain. And we will be back in a few weeks, probably. I don't know. This serves as kind of our off-season preview, so we're going to take a couple of weeks off here. Maybe we'll have a shorter episode whenever an offensive coordinator gets hired, but we'll be back at some point. Enjoy the playoffs. Enjoy a couple weeks of playoff action. The latest we would be back is after the Super Bowl, but we'll probably be back. We'll definitely be back probably before the Super Bowl.
I would think
So,
so.
like at worst, week of the Pro Bowl maybe. So be on the lookout for that. And until then, take care, everyone. Cheers.